I live in Dallas, Texas now. What? I live in Dallas, Texas. I live in Dallas, Texas. I live in Dallas, Texas. Okay, so obviously there is so much to catch up on. Hello, everyone. It's Crystolyn back with the video I have been waiting to make. So I can tell you right now, this is going to have to be like a mini series because there's just way too much to share and it's not all gonna fit in one video. But yes, God told me to move to Dallas, Texas, and that is what I did. Okay, but like, how did we get here? How did God tell me? What were all the things that happened, right? I know you've got questions and I think I have some answers, but I will tell you this off top as well. I'm not going to be able to talk about everything. You guys, if you haven't found out already, I'm pretty transparent. I'm kind of an open book. Like I'll share things. I don't mind. Like it's part of my calling to be transparent and share. However, there are some things that I just won't be able to share. They're too personal. They're too divine. And when I say that, I just mean that sometimes things are just between you and God, right? The other part of that is there are things that for safety reasons I can't share because let me just give you this quick little example. Where I even ended up living was so prophetic. Like God gave me the name of where I would be living, like my actual neighborhood. Obviously, I can't share that with y'all. So I can share the story, but I can't talk about every little detail just because it's so personal and, you know, for safety reasons and just because everybody needs to mind their own business. And legal reasons too, let's be clear. I can't talk about where I live. But yes, absolutely. God led me here and it has been 2 weeks. And I am just still in awe. I can't believe this is a real thing. I can't believe that I'm here. There's really like I'm really trying to figure out where to start because it's so hard for me to feel like it was just one thing. This has been a compilation of events. This has been an ongoing thing for at least a year for how I ended up here. But what I can tell you is that roughly a year ago, almost a year ago, when I was facing eviction where I was living, that is really when I became super aware that God was trying to get me to this place of total release of everything that I knew, everything that was familiar, so that I could walk into the newness that he had for me. And so that'll be a separate video in and of itself, I think. Maybe that'll be a part of the series because it's hard for me to think about where I am now and not think about how just under a year ago I was facing eviction and didn't know where I was gonna be, where I was gonna live, what was going to happen to me and my kids. And some people might think that that's too personal to talk about. I don't care about that because it's a part of my story. And so many of you, in the way that God even used you to encourage me and be there and just show up, that's so much a part of this journey. And I also want people to be clear on, you know, I guess I shouldn't say clear because maybe things won't be super clear, but like some people might wonder, well, how did you go from being evicted to being where you are now? Again, I just think it's part of the story and the journey, which is why I bring it up and it's why I want to talk about it. But guys, this again started over a year ago when I knew that I was supposed to move. And here's the other thing, I'm not even being so dramatic, but like I've always known, like my entire life, I'm 34 years old, I've known since I was at least 7 years old. At least, like I have vivid memories from being 6, 7, 8 years old and knowing I would be leaving Virginia, where I, you know, born and raised. I knew that. And it was so embedded in me that that would be a part of my life, a part of my journey, that I thought everyone felt that way. I thought everyone knew that one day they would grow up and move somewhere else. I know everybody didn't do that or doesn't do that, but it was just so a part of my brain, my insides, my makeup, my wiring, that I knew I would be leaving my hometown one day. And I anticipated that so much. I just didn't know how it would happen, when it would happen, and certainly never thought that it would be under these circumstances. And so, yes, let's just get into it a little bit. So God really started dealing with me in the fall of 2023 about my Genesis 12 moment. And that's what I'm calling this, because Genesis 12 is when God is speaking to Abram before he becomes Abraham, and he's telling him to leave his father's household, leave his native country, leave his homeland, and go to a land that God would show him. Basically, God is saying, leave everything familiar because I have something new for you. And again, I've always resonated with that story. I always knew that that was going to be a part of my life. I did. And that's how I know it's a part of my calling, that this had to happen. That God is, as a prophetic person, God will give you pictures and glimpses of your life at times. And so I didn't know where it would be, but I just always knew I was going to leave Virginia. And I'm just in awe right now. I'm going to have to edit out so many pauses of me just being like, because I'm in awe of the fact that God delivered. He came through like he always does. And he made this happen at times where I could not even fathom this taking place. I couldn't even understand how everything was going to come together to make this happen. I was scared. And it was so funny because God will show you in your process. And as much as I wanted to leave my hometown, as much as I was ready for it, as much as I thought I was ready, right? And I was ready. But I say that to say, when it really came time, I was like, wait, like I'm really leaving? And I was ready for it, but it was like I knew all the stuff that would come with that, and that's the part that I didn't necessarily feel ready for. Emotionally, I was ready to leave. That was fine. It was other things. And so a lot of that has to do with me caring about other people and how it affects them. And so it was just so multifaceted and multidimensional that I just wasn't sure how it was going to come together. But God did it. God came through. I just cannot, like, y'all, I cannot believe that I'm here and all the pieces have come together because it is in his will. It's a part of God's plan for me that I be here at this time. And so everything that has led up to this moment, it just allows me to rest in God's providence, his omniscience. I don't know how much the quality of the video is changing because I keep having to go back and forth between my phone, my camera. But basically, what I'm going to start off with, I think, is inserting a clip back in November of 2023. It was Thanksgiving Day. I'll never forget. I don't even remember the video. In this very moment, I don't know what's on the video. I just knew I recorded the video knowing that this moment, the present, would be here. And I was scared and I didn't know what to do. And I'm probably gonna look crazy, but I don't care. It's a part of the journey. It's a part of the story. And so let me maybe start there, and then I'll be able to talk a little bit more about how God has started to propel me in this direction. Maybe before I share the video, I'll just say this, like, when you truly surrender to God and you give up your plans, your ideas, your plans and ideas may not be bad. They may not be bad, but they may not be a part of God's perfect will for your life. And when you give him permission to take full control of the scenario, of the timeline, of the outcome, without you being so fixated on your goals and your plans, things will completely change. And that's what happened to me. And that was also part of the eviction, because it was God uprooting so much, but it was also God showing me who was for me and who was not. And that has nothing to do with who was able to contribute financially. God showed me people's hearts during that time and who could go with me in the future into my next and who could not. And that was so much a part of that experience, and I will forever be grateful for it. But it was during the eviction that I knew I heard God telling me to move. I knew he was saying move, but I kept on trying to get a place. I kept trying to get a place. Like, I knew I was supposed to move from where I was because of the ties to the place that I was living in. I needed to leave, and I knew that. But every time I tried, it wasn't working. So imagine my confusion. I'm just like, God, you're telling me to move. I'm trying. It's not working. Like, I'm trying to be obedient. I'm trying to do what you're saying. And it was such a process. But ultimately, what happened is that he told me, no, you're going to move. And I was like, oh, okay. We're like moving. Well, how's that gonna work? So again, this goes back to, I made another video recently where I talked about Mary, Jesus's mother, when the angel came to her and told her that she would birth the Messiah. And she was just like, okay. She didn't say no. She didn't say that's impossible. She just said, how is that gonna happen exactly? And that's where I was. That's how I felt. I was just like, how is this supposed to happen? Like, I could already see so many things coming against it. I could already see so many situations kind of like making it hard to make this happen, right? I could see so many situations making it nearly impossible to make this happen. But this is where I learned that when God opens a door, no man can shut it. And when he closes a door, no man can open it. So hello. So it is so overdue for me to make this video. I have to give a disclaimer for a second and just tell you I'm probably gonna be all over the place, number one, because there's so much to this story. Number two, there's gonna have to be multiple parts to this because there are just so many things that took place and happened to get me to this point that it's gonna have to be broken down into sections to the best of my ability. So I'm gonna try that. I need to go ahead and help this part of the video that I'm recording right now flow into the last place that I left off from. So long story short, I was trying to insert a video that I had recorded literally Thanksgiving Day of 2023. And I made that video in faith, knowing, God, I think you're saying to do this. And just in case I'm hearing you right, I'm about to start documenting this journey right now. And so my kids were with me for the earlier part of Thanksgiving Day, and then they were with their dad and his family for the second half of Thanksgiving. And so I recorded a video while I was home alone, and I was just literally outwardly processing all that I felt like God was saying. And it was a lot, and I was so emotional. I was crying in the video because I'm just like, God, are you seriously asking me to move and uproot not just my life, but like my children's lives? So anyone who knows me probably knows that I would be willing to do something like that. But knowing that it's not just about me and it affects my children, it just made it such a sensitive subject that I was just overwhelmed, okay? Overwhelmed. There's no concern, question, or just thought that anyone could bring up to me that I didn't already have. What about this? What about that? Well, what about this? What about that? Like anything anybody could ask me, I'm sure I thought about it upside down, inside out, backwards, frontwards, sideways, all the ways, because this was not a small decision by any means, and it was not one that was made lightly. So yes, here I am in Dallas, Texas. I still can't believe it. I have been here for 1 month now. When I first started recording the video, it hadn't quite been a month yet, and I've been trying to do this. I just haven't been able to find the time, the space, the quiet. And yeah, I might be all over the place, but God definitely told me to move here. And I know for so many people that might be like, what? Like, what are you talking about? I can't even begin to list all the things, and I won't be able to talk about all the reasons that I have that he gave me, because some are super personal. But I can assure you, if you don't believe that something like that can happen, then this just, you may not understand. But the way that my faith is set up and my relationship with God, I don't say that to sound like mine is blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying that the way that mine is set up, God could absolutely give me instructions like this that don't seem to make sense, and yet I have to follow them. And so while so much of it does not make sense to me, so much of it does. And that is why it's hard to start talking about when did this start happening? When did you know? Because there's always been a part of me that knew that I was going to leave my hometown. And ever since I was a little girl, like, I have vivid memories from being 7, 8 years old and just getting these pictures in my mind, which I now have come to know, like, when you're a prophetic person, God gives you pictures sometimes. It can be the future. It can be something that's about to happen soon. It could be something that's going to happen decades from then. You just never know. And that's happened all my life, where I've had these pictures and I didn't know where they fit, and they don't even make sense sometimes until I'm living in that moment. So I say that to say that ever since I was little, I knew that I was going to leave my home state, my hometown. I don't know. It was just a feeling. One reason that it did make sense to me in the grand scheme of things is because when I looked back and started trying to figure out, even in making these videos, like, how do I even begin to explain when this started? I gotta go that far back, because it was that early for me that I knew I would leave. Also, the whole story of Abram and becoming Abraham always resonated with me since I was a child. With what happened with Abram becoming Abraham and God telling him that he was going to bless him and make him, a mighty nation and all of these things, that story just always resonated with me when God told Abram he had to leave his father's house and go to a land that he would show him. He had to leave what was familiar. He had to leave his relatives. He had to leave his hometown. And he didn't even know exactly where he was going. He just knew, God is telling me to go and I have to go. And so he listened. And that story has just been in my heart my whole life. Like, I just knew that there was a part of me in that story. And so I say that to say that there are many of us who resonate with that, and it's because that's a part of our destiny and our calling as well. We're supposed to try to find ourselves in the Word of God, and we won't connect with every single character that we see or Bible figure, right? But there was something about Abraham that I just always felt like there's a part of me in that, and I know one day I'm also gonna have to leave. I just knew that. So I don't know how to explain that. I'm not here to prove that to anyone. I'm just sharing my story on how I got to where I am now. It didn't happen under the circumstances that I thought it would, but that doesn't matter, because God has a way of just getting us in line with his purpose. I always thought that, I always thought I would go away for college, first of all, right? I would go away or move away for college. I'd end up getting a job either wherever I go for college or somewhere else, and that would be my fresh start. But my college experience was just not conventional at all. I didn't really have the typical college experience because I was pretty much a wife and mother throughout college. And so I'm not saying I was trying to be out here partying and doing all this other stuff, but like, I went to a school in my hometown. Like, I commuted, I was from the area, so it just wasn't the typical experience, nor was the campus typical. Shout out to VCU. Anyway, I thought, okay, well, if I'm not gonna go away because I'm going to school, maybe I'll get a job one day that's gonna transfer me somewhere, or maybe, my husband and I will move somewhere together and we're gonna be in a different space. And those things didn't happen. Like, this was just straight up, God is asking me to do this, and either I'm going to be obedient or I'm not. And I know that so many people have questions. So many people have asked, like, how did I do it? And I'm like, all the questions that you have, well, what about this and what about this? Like, what it came down to for me Either I'm going to listen to God or I'm not. That is how serious it was for me. That's where I knew I was in my walk, in my faith journey, that he was requiring this of me. And rather than coming up with all the reasons and excuses why it couldn't happen, I just decided to lean into it. And as I leaned into it, yes, afraid, yes, worried, yes, concerned about so many things, God just confirmed along the way that this was meant to be. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to be here, because even yesterday, like today is July 5th. I don't know when I'll upload this video, but today is July 5th, 2024. Yesterday was July 4th, obviously. It was my mom's birthday. And that was another thing. My mom is currently here with me. She wanted to help me transition. Such a blessing. It's such a blessing, okay? But we ended up meeting another mother-daughter duo yesterday who were kind of in the same situation. And I'm saying that to say these moments keep happening for me. And so I know that this is on purpose. I know it was God. But okay, let's get to the nitty gritty. How did I know? How did I know? It's kind of hard for me to, again, get to those reasons without just going back in time, because in the end it all makes sense. For me it does. Like, it's every day I'm learning more about, wow, this is what you did, this is why you did it, this is why it had to happen at this time. So I moved here June 1st, 2024. That was 9 months. Somebody needs to catch that. That was 9 months after I was being evicted from where I lived back in Glen Allen, Virginia, Henrico County, Richmond, whatever you want to call it, back home. I was experiencing eviction in August of 2023. And I did not ultimately get evicted. God came through, okay? But when I tell you it was in the midnight hour, just wait till I tell that whole story. Whew. But I have to mention this because it was during that time that all these thoughts started coming back to me of, I'm not supposed to be here anymore. And through the eviction process, I started to think, maybe this is your way of getting me out. Like, sometimes God has to do something so uncomfortable in order to get us where we need to be. And I started thinking, maybe this is your way. Like, I would have never chosen this. Who would, right? But maybe this is your way of pushing me where I'm supposed to go. And when I thought about it, I'm like, okay, that was August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. Oh my gosh, 9 months. And then the 10th month, if you want to include that, because a full-term pregnancy is 40 weeks, which is technically 10 months, right? But May 31st, 2024 was a super crucial, important, significant, imperative date for my journey. And in May, that made 9 months from almost being evicted. When I tell y'all almost, like, the money got paid within the hour that it needed to before the sheriff showed up. Okay? So again, that's a video for another day. But I was going through that process back in August, and I was just like, what in the world are you telling me it's time to go? Because I knew change needed to happen. Change was taking place, but I didn't know all the ways to do it, nor did I want to lean on my own understanding. And it's hard to figure out where to take this, because there are certain things I just have to leave out, as not to involve other people too much in the story, although they are characters. And when I say characters, like, I'm talking about real people in my life, you know? But I don't want to unnecessarily bring anyone into this who is not choosing to share the story, okay? Nor is this about me just sharing my side to get my story out there. No, I feel led to do this, and I know that I'm called to be transparent. I'm called to share my story. I'm called to share my faith journey. And I don't always want to. And part of me feels like I've been even disobedient in this because I feel like I was supposed to have been doing these videos, but I sometimes just can't get a hang or a handle on how am I going to do it? When am I going to do it when I have so much other things going on? And then sometimes I'll try to do it and the camera's not working. Then I'll try my phone and there's no storage. Like, it's just always something. Even when I try, like, oh, get the storage on there, charge the camera, something be going wrong. And so it's just been a challenge and I have tried, but today I am trying to get back into it and at least start the story, because there's so much to it. There's so much. And I would be remiss to not mention that in April of 2023, I actually was moving. I was still staying in town. I was still gonna be in Richmond, but I was moving to a different part to start fresh. I can put it like that. And I had secured housing, paid the first month's rent and the security deposit. I had my move-in date, and I was praying all along the way, like, God, are you really saying that, can I move forward? Like, are you telling me to do this? Because when it comes to big life decisions, I don't want to do this without God. I don't. Like, I can't and I don't want to. And so I was just like, Lord, just stop me if this isn't you and show me what to do. And so I found a place. Everything in the process was so smooth. It was so crystal clear that I could not believe it was. I was like, is this what it's like to like really know that you're making the right decisions? Because there's just like, it's this smooth, because I'm used to bumpy roads, okay? And see, both of those can be tricky because adversity can mean you're on the right track and the enemy is trying to discourage you. But sometimes adversity can mean, you know, you're trying to do something within your own power and your own might and strength, and you're not supposed to. So it's different ways to look at it, okay? That's why you have to have your personal relationship with God to understand what he's saying to you. So I tried to move back in April of 2023. I had secured the place. My mom went to look at it with me. Like, I was like, this is where I'm gonna be. Like, the money was put down. All of that was fine. When I showed up, and I'm just gonna speed through this process. When I showed up for move-in day, they all of a sudden told me that I still owed nearly $500. Oh, well, we have administrative fees that are due on the day of move-in. And I'm not ashamed to say I didn't have an extra $400 or $500 to give those people on that day. Like, no, I've already paid my first month's rent and security deposit, and you're asking for more, which was never discussed. So it rubbed me the wrong way, but let me back up. When I showed up for move-in, like, you have a scheduled time. Let's say I was supposed to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning to pick up my keys. I literally sat in that lobby for 2 hours before anyone assisted me. That was already a problem. Now, some of you might be wondering, and you stayed? Well, yes, because I was trying to get my keys and move, okay? My whole house was packed up. My whole entire place was in boxes and packed up because I was ready to go. And I get there to get the keys. They had one person working in there, and it was her first day, and she was by herself. I was like, what in the world? So there was nothing I could do but wait, because there were several of us there moving in. And so it just took that long, because she walked everyone to their unit and showed them around and did a walkthrough inspection of what's it looking like when you first get there. I mean, it took at least 30 minutes per person, at least, that she was working with. And so, yeah, I was waiting for 2 hours before she even assisted me. Second problem was her customer service just wasn't there. Now, I'm big on customer service, okay? I'm not one of those, let me see your manager, unless it's just crazy. And even then, I don't say it like that. But she was just not friendly. And I'm like, I haven't paid all this money to be here for homegirl to be talking to me like, you know, kind of like a next situation. Like, I'm gonna need the customer service. I'm gonna need you to slow down and treat me like a resident, because that's what I am. And this is not putting a good taste in my mouth. So then we got to the point of she was telling me more money was needed. I'm like, well, I've dealt with so-and-so throughout this process the whole time, and they never mentioned that. And I'm the kind of person who asks those questions like, hey, is there anything else that's going to be due? Because I like to have things in order and out of the way. That's why everything was already paid online. Like I had the residential portal and everything was paid online, good to go. And she was just like, well, because we're a new property, we do administrative fees. And, if you don't pay it today, you won't be able to move in. She ended up telling me that I could push it back a week, which would then show that my move-in is not happening until a week out. And mind you, I already paid the full rent for that month. And so she was like, that would mean that you don't owe us anything else because you've already paid the full month's rent. So if you move in a week later, you won't have any administrative fees to pay because it'll be covered. Well, it just still rubbed me the wrong way that, I was being asked to pay something that I had asked about. So then I was like, well, let me think about it. I ended up leaving and saying, well, clearly I'm not going to move in today because I'm not giving this extra money. Like I have to be able to buy groceries and things that I need for the house and everything is packed up, right? I had moving help. Like people had, told me they were going to be there. They confirmed that they were going to be there to help me. And I had to tell them like, it's not happening today. It was a lot and it was devastating for me. I can't even begin to go into all of that, but it was devastating for me to not be able to leave an environment that I knew I was supposed to get out of. Here's another example of how I knew it was time to go, but I was trying to make it happen, I guess maybe in my own whatever. Another reason I was moving, I had some neighbors at the time who were absolutely off their rocker. I'm trying to watch my words here. These neighbors were disturbed, okay? Long story short, this is what I'll say. One of the people who lived above me, apparently, I had never met this person, was a transgender woman. So biologically birthed a male who identifies as a female, okay? I never met the person. They were calling the police on my household saying the most outlandish things. They were saying that we were harassing them in the parking lot, that we were saying slurs at them, that they heard people in my apartment being stabbed and that I was doing it and I didn't know these people. Now I know this sounds absolutely insane. I know. That's why I was trying to move because it was ridiculous. This person tried to break into my home. This person was standing on my doorstep in the midnight hours. The police wouldn't do anything about it because they're just like, well, if they're not doing anything, this person was like, when I say trying to break into our home, they were like jiggling the doorknob and trying to get in. And when we called the police, they were just like, well, it's not against the law for someone to jiggle your door handle. It was absurd. Because of the issues, because I had to call the police, because there were police reports, and the person, they called the police on me 4 times in one night before. My children were getting concerned and anxious, like, why is this why do the police keep coming to our house? It was such a bad situation, and I just was not going to have any parts of it. As a parent, first of all, we want peace in our lives, right? But my kids, why would I want that for them? And so, man, it was a lot. It was a lot that happened. And so when I tell you I was ready to move in April of 2023, I was so ready. I was so ready. And when I showed up and it couldn't happen, I was devastated. I was devastated. I was just like, God, I asked you if this was not from you to tell me. I said, if you don't want me to do this, don't let me. And then he showed me this image of what in the Bible was Abraham about to sacrifice his son Isaac. And it was about going through the process as long as God is saying yes, but when he says no, are you listening? And I couldn't be hung up on what I thought God had said. I had to listen to what he was saying in that moment. it was so many other things that happened, but the other big determining factor was that I was going to be living on a higher floor that would have required elevator use, and their elevator broke. Now we are talking about a brand new building. Why is the elevator broken? Why, like, all this stuff was going, I wouldn't have been able to move anything in without the elevator assistance. And so it was just a lot. And I said, as upset as I am, and as much as I want to leave my environment and come to this new space, God, if you're saying not yet, or if you're saying pause, or if you're saying stop, I will do it. And so he showed me the image of Abraham about to sacrifice Isaac. And if you don't know the story, I'll run through it super quick. Abraham, as I mentioned before, and this is what I'm saying, like, his story has been so much a part of my life that God knew what he was doing and showing that to me. Abraham had prayed for his son. Well, God told him he would bless him with a son, and Abraham ended up going his own way. He and his wife Sarah ended up, using their maidservant, Sarah's maidservant, to birth a son through him. But God was like, that's not what I told you. That's not the promise. And so they ended up having their own son in their old age, and his name was Isaac. Isaac was their promise. Okay. This is what God told them he was going to do, and he delivered, even when they went outside of his will and tried to do it their way. That's a word. And so God was showing me, this was your Isaac. I know you want this, and this is what you've been praying for. But the moment that he was talking about is when he asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. Now that sounds crazy, right? This is the son that God promised him he would have, and then he's saying to sacrifice him. But the beautiful part was that up until the moment, like, Abraham went through every single step, just like I went through every single step to get to this new place that I feel like you're telling me to go to. And then right at the last minute, God says, stop. He told him, don't do it. And there was a ram in the bush for him to sacrifice to God. And it was about offering something to God that you think you want so bad, or that, not that Abraham wanted to sacrifice Isaac. It wasn't that. It was Isaac that he wanted so bad. And God is asking you to sacrifice that, but then God will always come through. I hope I'm explaining that well enough for you to catch it. I wanted to leave so bad. I wanted out of my situation so bad. I wanted my own space so bad. And God was allowing me to see, he's like, this is what you, like, every step was securing in me all the questions that I asked. Am I really ready for this? Do I want this? All these things. Should I do this? Yes, yes, yes. And then at the last minute, it was like a pause. Not right now. I don't know if you've ever been through something like that, where you want something so bad that God allows you to go through the motions, and then he tells you to wait. And that's hard. It's like he takes you to the place you've been asked to go. Imagine a building right now with 20 floors. That's the place you're supposed to get to. And you finally get there, but then you have the key, but you don't know which door is yours. And so you keep on walking through. You're like, I'm here, but like, where am I supposed to go? And it's like just trusting him as you're in the hallway, as you're walking and taking one step at a time. That's where I found myself. And so I had to let it go. And that was difficult. And I ended up getting sick. I had shingles. It could have been from stress. I'm sure it was. And it was just a hard time. So basically the first part of the summer of 2023, I was sick, not doing well. And so much happened, man. But that resulted in me getting behind on rent, a month behind. And places are very strict nowadays. Maybe they've always been, but super strict. And so I was given an eviction notice in August, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So let me say this. I was able to stay at my place. I was able to, because here's the thing, they were letting me get out of my lease due to the safety issues I was experiencing with the neighbor and other stuff going on. But because I couldn't move anymore, I had to renege on that and put in writing like, hey, I'm no longer leaving, and I had to stay where I was. And ultimately I had to stay there for an additional year. Not easy. That was not easy. But in August, so when I tell you there are so many parts to this, I used to work for the company that owned the apartments that I lived in. And I left that position in April, the same month that I was going to move. And they were upset because I left and that I had been dealing with some discrimination that I went to HR about that did not make it better, but worse, okay? And it was a lot happening. So they were upset with me because I went to try to resolve the discrimination issues at HR. Then I said I wanted to move because of the safety issues with the neighbor. And even though all of that was valid, they were looking at it like, oh, you trying to move? Oh, and now you want to stay? So it was a lot. And they were looking for every reason to try to get me out. And so in August, they gave me the eviction notice, which was a 10-day notice, mind you. I've never been evicted, so I always thought you get 30 days at least. I had a 10-day notice to be out or pay. They tacked on all these legal fees. It was a hot mess. It was terrible. It was so scary. And at that time, let me get back to August now. In August, I didn't have anywhere to go with me and my kids. I didn't. And I had a cousin who lived out of state who offered to let me and the kids come live with them. And something about them saying that just sparked something in me that said, it's time to go. It's time to go. And I was like, what now? Like, again, going back to the beginning, I always knew I was gonna move, but I didn't think it was gonna be like that. I didn't think it was gonna look like that. My cousin offered me to go. I was seriously contemplating leaving. My cousin lives in Indiana. It wasn't like I was like, yeah, I'm going to Indiana. It was just like, God, if you're telling me to go, I'm going to go. But I had just gotten hired. Like remember I left the job. I left there in April. So now we're in August and I'm going back to teaching after taking like 2 years off from teaching. I'm going back. And I had got hired by my old high school, my alma mater. And so I was just like, God, what do I do? Are you telling me to take the job and stay here and work this? Are you telling me to just move on? Because, oh man, there's such another important part of this is back in June, I met my spiritual mentor. Shout out to Prophetess Rochelle. I met her in June when I went to a conference in California. I did not have a good time there. I won't go into that right now. I did not enjoy myself. But I knew it was a setup by God for me to be there. I knew it was a setup by God. And when I met Prophetess Rochelle, it was the ding, 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 this is why you're here. And so I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was there because I had to meet her. And it was just divine. God will be so strategic about giving you your destiny helpers. He will be so strategic that he will use a work conference to get you somewhere just so you can be in the same room as this person who also doesn't even live there, just so y'all can meet. And to this day, like, she is my spiritual mentor and I just love her and appreciate her so much. And she prophesied over me in June. God's gonna have you on assignment at this school that you're going to. And it's not even about the teaching part. Yes, you're gonna do that, but it's about the relationships that you're gonna build. You are gonna be a lifeline for some of these students. You are going to be there for them in ways you can't even understand and they won't even fully understand for years to come. But God is setting you up there and there's gonna be grace and favor put on you to be in that position. And truer words were never spoken, because that's exactly what happened. And that was in June and I started in August. I had never seen a prophecy come to pass so quickly. Now, 2 months may sound like a long time to y'all, but I've heard prophecy all my life. I've also experienced prophetic things, but a lot of times they have been out, like far out, right? And so for her to say that and it immediately happened, wow. But before school started back up in August, I was on the fence, like, God, what do I do? And I just didn't feel like, I knew God was saying move. I heard it. I knew God was saying move. Since August at least, I was hearing move. But my cousin was offering me housing and to take me and the kids in, and I'm like, I need that too. Like, what am I going to do? And I don't know. I just continued to be led, and ultimately, I'm gonna make another video about the eviction. I stayed in Richmond for the school year. And when it was time for me to re-sign the lease, because we didn't end up facing the eviction, I mean, we were facing it, but we didn't get evicted. It wasn't just a threat of, oh yeah, you're gonna get evicted if you don't do this. Like, it was the summons was given, and the sheriff had an appointment to come. And so I just felt so alone in that process too. It was a lot, but God was with me. And this is how your relationship with him can get solidified during hard times, because it's a make it or break it kind of situation where God is showing you what you're made of, but it's also showing you, what is my relationship with him? Am I truly relying on him as my source? Am I truly leaning on him? And it was so much. It was so eye-opening. And God is also showing you who is there for you. Now, we're not just talking about monetarily, but God uses adversity in our situations that we go through to show us who's on our side and who's not. And those are so revelatory that those moments are completely necessary, no matter how ugly they seem. And it was at that time that I knew God was telling me to move, but I was confused, because I'm like, you're telling me to stay on a job here. You're showing me people who are not for me, who are pretending to be, and you still have some of them like in my life, and some people are family, so you can't just get rid of them. But yeah, it was a time. It was a time. So I ended up going through the school year, and everything just went exactly how Prophetess Rochelle said it would. But I had to re-sign the lease, right? When I was facing the eviction, I had to re-sign a lease. And I didn't want to. I fought against it, because I'm like, God, I hear you telling me to move. You're saying move, so I'm trying to move. Literally went to a townhouse where the gentleman told me that he was going to let me move in, but he had to go visit his ill mother out of the country. And when he came back, he was like, that's when I'll get all the paperwork to you. But, he showed me the place. He gave me the application. I had turned that in, and then I never heard back. And I was just like, God, what is going on? I'm trying to listen to you. You're saying move. I'm trying. What is happening? And let's just fast forward a little bit. So when I got the letter, because I had not responded to them, I hadn't re-signed the lease. I was just still living where I was living, right? But I didn't re-sign the lease because I'm like, I don't want to be here. You're telling me to move. Why would I stay? And I'm fast forwarding a little bit, because I'll share more of this maybe in the eviction story. But basically, I had gotten a letter from the releasing office that, for me to sign for the renewal. And I had looked at it, but I was just like, I'm not signing it. And one day I went back to it. And plus, I'm like, I'm not staying here for another year. Like, if you're saying, I'm not doing that. God told me to go get that letter again. Go pick it up. And when I picked it up, I saw a date that I had not seen before. Now, I'm willing to say that maybe I overlooked it, but there weren't more than 6-7 dates to choose from. So it wasn't like there were a ton, definitely less than 10. And I knew I'm not signing this because I'm not staying here for a year. Willing to say I overlooked the date, but I'm also so willing to say that God did a supernatural thing. And when I picked that paper up, because he told me to go back to it, I looked on it, and there was a 7-month option to renew the lease for it was 6-7 months, depending on how you look at the date, 6-7 months to renew it. And the end date of the lease was going to be May 31st, 2024. So remember I told y'all that date was super important? That's one of the reasons why. Because when he was saying move, 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 and then he told me to pick up the paper and I saw that date, I knew it immediately connected for me that I knew he was saying, yes, move, but this is the date. It's not right now. I know you want to, but I'm gonna get you through the school year, because ultimately that's what you want. You want to be able to get to the school year right now without having to move in the start of it and switch schools for the kids and all this stuff. I'm going to get you through the school year. And that's exactly what he did. And so May 31st was also the last day of school. Like, God couldn't have done this any better. The last day of school was May 31st, and it was also the day that my lease ended. And that's when I knew he was saying to me, I need you to leave on May 31st. And so this video is too long already. I'm going to end it. This is just part one. The next video is certainly going to get into the hows. How did I know that he said to move? And how did I know Dallas, Texas? All of that will be revealed, well, as much as he allows me to share, because I won't be able to go into all of it. But if you stuck around this long, thank you so much. I want you to know that I'm alive and well. I have been very, quiet, and it's been like that for me for a couple of years now, because this has been a pruning season. God is doing so much in my life. It's such a sensitive time that I've just had to keep to myself and in my little nuclear circle and allow God to just do what he needs to do right here so that I could be prepared for my next. And I'm standing in my next. And I'm so, so grateful to be here. But I look forward to sharing more with you very soon.